Hey everybody, Stefan here, and as promised, I'm going to make a second video. This is the second video for the lab final. TCC Northeast Campus Anatomy and Physiology 1 Fall 2015 semester. If you open up your lab book to page number 40, page numbers 40, 41, and 42, they have all the muscles we need to know as well as their actions and respective insertions and origins. Usually I would use Essential Anatomy on my Mac, but apparently it doesn't run because my computer's too old. But I have it running here on my iPhone, and I'm recording my phone screen on my laptop. Hopefully this works. I've only used this application probably twice. So let's load up the muscles. You can add layers of muscles here with the application. Perfect. Starting from the top, the frontalis. That's clearly the one right on top. Frontalis. Ignore what it says, how it's the frontal belly of the occipital frontalis. That's the full name. For the purposes of our lab book, all we need to know is frontalis. The action is it elevates the eyebrow. Rotating to the other side of the head, we have these two over here. This is the occipitalis. And obviously your occipitalis muscle sits on top of the occipitalis bone, and the action is to draw the scalp backwards. Turning the head one more time. The orbicularis oculi, that is the muscle around the eye, and that closes the eyelids. Unfortunately, on this model, I don't have the levator palpebrae superioris, but that would be the muscle that opens your eyelids. Next, we have the orbicular oris. Oris for oral, that's the mouth. Orbicularis oris, and the action is to draw the lips together. Next, let's go to the zygomaticus. That's the side of the head. Now, there's a lot of stuff here, but the easiest way to remember it is there's actually two. There's the zygomaticus major and the zygomaticus minor. But I'm assuming your lab professor will stick the pointer on the larger one. So that would be the major, zygomaticus major. And the action of that is it raises the corner of the mouth laterally. The origin is the zygomatic bone, which would be this guy. And then the insertion point is the skin and the muscles at the corner of the mouth. Excuse me. The next one is the buccinator. Let's see if I can select that without having to remove a layer. It's basically, it's under. Nope, can't do it. There we go. So I'm going to click on remove a layer of muscle. I'm going to remove another layer. There we go. So it's, how should I best describe this? I've seen several textbooks say that it's the muscle that a trumpet player, for example, would use, because the action is compression of the cheek. So there it is right over there. What's next? Platysma. Okay, let's turn this guy's face. Zoom out a little bit. Platysma is this huge mass of muscle that goes from the bottom of the jaw to the clavicle. So this is the platysma. There's obviously two parts. The masseter, platysma, action, depression of the mandible, depression of the corner of the mouth. There we go. Now let's go to the masseter. This one's really easy. It's the big one. Boom. Superficial masseter. You just have to write masseter, and that is responsible for the elevation of the mandible. Next we have temporalis. That's the huge muscle on the side of your head. The temporalis muscle, and the action is elevation and retraction of the mandible. And then finally, for the muscles of the head and the neck, we have sternocleidomastoid. I think that's how you say it. And it's this. Let me remove a layer of muscle, actually. It might be easier to see. Remove the platysma. There we go. You have two of these, obviously. The action is flexion of the neck forward, so that would require the left and the right one. Or you can have rotation of the head towards the opposite shoulder, and that would require only one muscle. So that's it for the muscles of the head and the neck. Let's add a layer of muscle. Here we go. Now let's go to the muscles of the thoracic region. Okay, so pectoralis major, that's really easy. It's the pecs, pectoralis major. You have to write the complete name. Action is flexion, adduction, and rotation of the humerus. Next, we have the serratus anterior. And the easiest way to remember them is serratus looks like a bunch of scissors. There we go. So that would be your serratus anterior, that crisscross shape, and the action is to draw the scapula forward. You can see the scapula in the back. Let me remove a layer, remove another layer. Yeah, really good photo there. I would suggest you go to the Science Learning Center and play with the muscles. With the models of the muscles there, because that's going to be more respective of our exam than an application. Next, we have the external intercostals. Let me remove a layer, remove another layer. So your costals are your ribs. Your external intercostals, there we go. They're the meat on the ribs towards the outside, versus your internal intercostals. It's the meat on the ribs on the inside. The action of the external intercostals is enlarge the rib cage for inspiration, and then the action of the internal intercostals is to depress the rib cage for expiration. Let me add back the layers of the muscles. Turn this guy around because our next muscle is the trapezius. Boom. It's this entire hunk of meat that is your trapezius, and that is extension of the head, elevation, rotation, and adduction of the scapula. And finally, we have the diaphragm, which I don't even know if I could show the diaphragm on here, but let's try. Can I? No, that's a rib. That's the abs. There it is. There's the diaphragm. As you can see, it's basically like a sheet. A sheet that separates your superior thoracic cavity from your, I don't even know what to call this. I should know this. Abdominopelvic cavity. There we go. So yeah, action of the diaphragm is expansion of the thorax. Moving on to the muscles of the abdominal wall, we have the external obliques. You have two of them. The action is compression of the abdomen and flexion of the body at the lumbar region. You have your internal obliques. I'm going to have to remove a layer off this guy. Internal obliques. Again, action is compression of the abdomen and flexion of the body at the lumbar region. You have your transverse abdominis. Again, I'm going to remove a layer. Your transverse abdominis are there. And you can tell they're transverse because of the fibers going from right to left to right, whatever have you, what have you. The action of that is compression of the abdomen. Then we have the rectus abdominis, aka the six-pack. You need to know the origin and insertion of these. The origin is the pubic bone, so that would be under. Oh, yeah, I can't show that, but it's okay. Origin is pubic bone, and the insertion is the sternum and ribs 5 to 7. What is the action of the rectus abdominis? Compression of the abdomen, flexion of the vertebral column. And that is it for the muscles of the abdominal wall. Moving on to the muscles of the upper extremities. We have the deltoid, aka the shoulder. Boom. Deltoid. Action is the abduction, abduction, abduction and flexion of the arm, as well as, that's it, abduction and flexion of the arm. The origin is the clavicle, which sadly you can't see, but yeah, the origin is the clavicle, and the insertion point is the humerus. That's the deltoid. Next we have the latissimus dorsi, aka your lats. Those are here. There's one, there's the other one. Your lats. Action for those is extension, adduction, and rotation of the arm. What's next? Tres major. That's the big one. Let's see if I can do this at a proper angle. You have your tres major, tres minor, and I want to say this is the infraspinatus. Let me see if I'm right. Boom. All right, good. So there's the tres major, and that is adduction and rotation of the arm. We don't have to know the tres minor. That's nice. That's nice, actually. So that's just the tres major. That's all the way on the bottom. The subscapularis. Okay. How am I going to show the subscapularis? Because I need to show it on the inside of an arm. But I can't just rip off an arm, obviously. I would have to look that up on Google. Hide others? No. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't. No, I can't show that. Sadly. Strange. Is it that? Oh, look at that. Subscapularis. Never mind. The subscapularis, that is responsible for rotation of the humerus. There is a model in our lab of a giant arm. It's basically the huge muscle at the top of that model. Again, go to the Science Learning Center. Recommended. Let's add back the layers of the arms. Turn the guy around. You need to know your supraspinatus. If that's the infraspinatus, then I'm going to assume the supraspinatus is on top. Yep, there you go. Supraspinatus. I had to remove a layer of muscle, so it would basically sit under the trapezius, under your traps, and then medially to your deltoid. So there is your supraspinatus. Did I get that right? Yeah, supraspinatus. Action of that is abduction of the arm. Next, we're moving towards the biceps. That would be this. Biceps brachii. You have to say the full name. Try not to worry about long head versus short head. That's not important. The action of the biceps brachii is flexion of the forearm and supination of the hand. And the origin of the biceps, oddly enough, is the scapula in the back. And the insertion point is the radius, which makes sense because that would be the bone in your forearm. One of the bones in your forearm. Next, we have the brachialis, which is the muscle right under the biceps. So here's the biceps. Let me see what happens if I remove the layer. Remove another layer. Nope, it doesn't work. Increase. So yeah, the brachialis sits right under the biceps. The action of that is flexion of the forearm. Let me show you on the other side. This is your tricep, this is your bicep, and then right under it is the brachialis. Speaking about triceps, that's the next one on the bottom of page 47. Triceps, the origin is the scapula and the humerus, and the insertion point is the ulna. And the action is extension of the forearm. The triceps are on the back. There's two of them. There's the big one. I don't know where the third one is. Is it that one? Yep, there we go. Triceps brachii. Remember, you have to write the whole thing. Biceps brachii, triceps brachii, etc., etc. So that's it for page 41. Let's move to page 42, which is the muscles of the lower extremities, aka your legs. Gluteus maximus. As soon as you see gluteus, you should automatically read ass. So there is your gluteus maximus. The action is extension and lateral rotation of the femur at the hip. The origin is the ilium, the sacrum, and the coccyx, and the insertion point is the femur. Next, you have the gluteus medius, which sits right above. Gluteus medius, that is abduction and medial rotation of the femur at the hip. Your gluteus minimus, I have to remove a couple of layers of muscle for you to see it. It's this tiny guy right there, gluteus minimus, hence the name. It's the small muscle of the back of the butt. It has the same action. So you have your abduction and medial rotation of the femur at the hip. Add back on the layers of muscle. What's next? Tensor fasciae latae. I like to call it the tensor fasciae latae, which is probably not correct, but that's how I remember it. And that is the muscle all the way on the side of your leg. The action is abduction, ABD, abduction, and medial rotation of the femur at the hip and extension of the knee. Next, you have your adductor longus, magnus, and brevis. That's gracilis. How do you get to the adductors? I think I have to remove a layer of muscle. There we go. There's the adductor longus. Adductor longus. Where's the magnus? I'm assuming that's the big one. Yep, magnus is the big one. Can you see it from the back a little bit? What happens if I remove a layer of skin, of muscle? I'm getting rid of everything. And then the brevis, I'm going to assume it's the tiny one. Nope, it's not. I can't get to that on this, in this application. Sorry. Moving on to the biceps femoris. Femoris should tell you femur, and biceps should tell you two. So that is this one. No, sorry, that's the rectus femoris. What the hell am I doing? The bicep femoris is your hamstrings. Bicep femoris. That is responsible for extension of the femur at the hip and flexion of the knee. The origin is the ischium and the femur, and the insertion point is the tibia and fibula. biceps femoris. Next, we have the semitendinosus and semimembranosus, which, I'll be honest, I don't even remember where those are. And I just accidentally clicked on one. So they are right next to, that's the semimembranosus. Okay, now where's the semimentididosis? I have to remind you I'm on a 4.7 inch screen, so this is kind of small. Nope, don't know where that is. Go to the Science Learning Center and find it. Next up, we have the vastus medialis, intermedius, and lateralis, otherwise known as 3 of the 4 muscles of your quadricep. Let's move the guy here. So as the names would suggest, the lateral is the vastus lateralis. The one on the inside, medial, that is the vastus medialis. And then the vastus intermedius, it's actually under the rectus femoris. So this is the rectus femoris, and if I remove that, there's your vastus intermedius. It sits under it. And all of those are responsible for extension of the knee. Extension of the knee. What's next? Rectus femoris, I already said it. It's that one, extension of the knee. Sorry, flexion of the femur at the hip and extension of the knee. Good. Now we have gracilis, which that's the muscle that runs directly down from your pubic area. So there it is right there. There's one on the other side as well. Runs straight down. That is your gracilis. And the action of that is adduction of the femur at the hip and flexion of the knee. What's next? Sartorius. Sartorius runs across. So this guy runs across. That's your sartorius. That's responsible for abduction and lateral rotation of the femur at the hip and flexion of the knee. A couple more left and we're done. Gastrocnemius, otherwise known as your calf. There you go. Gastrocnemius, your calf muscles. Action of that is plantar flexion of the foot. The origin is the femur, and the insertion point is the calcaneus. Calcaneus. The soleus, I'm going to have to remove a layer. It's this one, which doesn't really help you much, but basically think of the soleus as right under your calves. So if I remove the calves, there's your soleus. Soleus. And again, the action of that is plantar flexion of the foot. Next, we have tibialis posterior. So your tibia is the big one. So your tibialis posterior, where is that? Fibularis longus. Fibularis longus. Longus. Let me add a layer of muscle. There it is. There's the tibialis anterior, but I need the posterior. Soleus. This is not working with me here. Nope. Can't get it to function. Let's try one more time. Remove a layer of muscle. No. 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 Nope, I can't not get the tibialis posterior to properly display on this model. But in the process of trying to find it, we saw the fibularis group, and that's basically all the muscles on the side. So there's the fibularis longus. There's the fibularis longus. Where's the other ones? Fibularis longus. Tibialis posterior. Hey, we found the tibialis posterior. It's all the way in the back. Really, really deep. Under all that. Under all the other muscles. The fibularis group, otherwise known as the pernicious muscles that enable plantar flexion. I would just recommend you remember the fibularis longus. I actually emailed Professor Gargan about that, and she said that's the one she would point to if it was on her exam. And then finally, tibialis anterior, which is the front. That would be, there you go, tibialis anterior. It's the chunk of meat right to the side of your tibia. And the action of the tibialis anterior is dorsiflexion, aka inversion of the foot. And that's it for the muscles. Hope this helps.